a really consequential decision has just been handed down. Paula Reed, the court has made a decision.
This is a win for former President Trump. Here, the Supreme Court has reversed a ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court that would have removed former President Trump from the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the so-called insurrectionist ban. Now, this is very much what we expected based on what we saw about a month ago during oral argument. Justices on both sides of the aisle appeared skeptical of Colorado's argument that Trump could be removed by the state under the 14th Amendment. So this is a huge win. It means that former President Trump will appear on the primary ballot. And this applies not only to Colorado, but also to states across the country. Because as we've seen, many states have tried this way of removing Trump from the ballot. It was considered a novel, long shot way to bump Trump out of eligibility for the White House. But we've only seen Colorado, Maine, and Illinois actually remove him. But here, the Supreme Court, as you know, the final word on constitutional questions, saying no, it is up to Congress, not the states, to do this. So an enormous win for former President Trump.
This is so significant, Paula. We knew in the 2.5-hour argument that was had that they were leaning in this direction. They asked the question, if you remember, the moment in time of, well, why should Colorado be the one to decide for the rest of the nation a matter of such consequence? And there was some pushback on whether a state could actually do this. It seems like they want Congress to actually make the decision because of ambiguity, maybe a little bit of vagueness, but this is very important because he was already still on the ballot, as you know. But the idea of them saying this is for Congress to look at, not us, means they don't want politics in the Supreme Court right now.
That's exactly right. And even though I'm sure they'd love to avoid all of these Trump-related cases, this is the first of at least two big Trump-related cases they're taking down.
Because immunity is still on the horizon.
Exactly. In a month and a half, we'll be back on April 22nd. They're going to hear oral arguments about whether former President Trump has immunity to protect him from the special counsel's federal election subversion case. But let's look at the timing here, right? It was almost a month ago that we were here for oral arguments. This was a case that they were considering on an expedited basis. I don't know about you, but I was a little surprised that it took them a month to unanimously do what we expected them to do.
Especially because they took the case up very quickly, right? Yeah. It wasn't that they were, in the case of immunity, they said 7 weeks from now we'll hear something. In this case, they said we're going to hear it pretty quickly. They had a pretty easy turnaround. But this is the day before Super Tuesday as well. He's already on the ballot. As you mentioned, other states are wanting to see if they have a leg to stand on here. But Paula, the idea that the Supreme Court was going to make this decision was not so shocking. But they took that case up in the first instance, or some was surprising.
It was surprising because so many people thought this was such a novel legal theory that you weren't really going to successfully be able to remove Trump based on this obscure provision of the 14th Amendment that was enacted after the Civil War. But then we saw in the state of Colorado, even the courts within that state were split on whether this applied to presidents. But once you got that Supreme Court, a Colorado ruling that removed him, it really seemed inevitable that the Supreme Court would have to take this up, because even in states that had tried this and they didn't remove him, they left the door open. And without the Supreme Court clarifying this question, we would likely see litigation and arguably a lot of chaos and confusion throughout the presidential contest. So this also, of course, applies to the general election. And for anyone that's confused, former President Trump will appear on primary ballots, and assuming he is the nominee, as we expect him to be, on the general election ballot. Very much expected, but an enormous win for the former president.
It really is. And remember, to go back, it was a trial court in Colorado who made a finding surrounding insurrection without having an actual jury trial. He has not been charged with insurrection, not been convicted of insurrection in a criminal proceeding. The Colorado Supreme Court was the one that said, yes, actually he should be removed from the actual ballot. Now, Paula, though, this is going to suggest that because there's been no finding,